Wow. So, Gary Russell Jr., Mark Magsayo. All right. Yeah, Gary Russell Jr., he's one of the longest like reigning champions in boxing. He held this title for 6 years and all, right? And last night he happened to lose his title. Now, who on earth thought he really was, really had a chance to win this fight? I didn't, okay? I mean, I had Gary Russell losing this fight on I mean, big. I'm talking about way before fight night, way before the bell rang, okay? I mean, at Monday, at the beginning of this week, I was like, man, Gary Russell Jr., he's gonna lose this fight because it was too many red flags. You had the number one, he's been off for 2 years. He's gonna be very rusty. All right. Two, he comes and says that he has an injury. All right. Actually, no. Two, he was training himself. His father wasn't in his corner. His dad's having some problems, whatnot. We all heard the story. It's his father, so he was training himself. The last fighter I seen do that was who was it? Figueroa, like Omar Figueroa, was it? He ended up losing badly. Oh my gosh. And then, from training himself, okay. Then, came the injury, okay? He said he got injured 2 weeks before the fight. So it was a lot of red flags in this fight. Now, when the fight began on fight night, all right, bell rang. All right, Mark Magsayo was, well, doing what he was supposed to do. Win, the first 3 rounds against a fighter who has been out of boxing, out of the sport for 2 years, had to train himself. He has an injury, and Mark, my guy, Magsayo was winning the rounds. He was matching his jab with Gary Russell Jr.'s jab and everything. He was punching at the same time Gary Russell Jr. was punching. And this from round 1 to round 3. Then Gary Russell got hurt in round 4, and then after that, Gary Russell converted into fighting with one hand, his power hand, the left, the straight left, okay? And he looked pretty good. Look, I mean, he put in a pretty good effort. And I can see why some people are saying it was a robbery. I mean, look, he put on a pretty good show for a guy who was hurt, a guy who'd been out of the ring for 2 years, a guy who had to train himself. All right, look, you got to give it to Gary Russell Jr. He put on a pretty good show for a guy that was hurt. All right, the fight was still entertaining. Now, what I was thinking at the beginning of the week, like I said, I had Gary Russell Jr. losing this fight real big. I thought he was going to get knocked out. I thought he was going to get stopped, but it was a whole different show from what I thought. Okay, Gary Russell Jr., he did show effort. Okay, he showed that he was trying to keep his title. He was trying to defend it. Now, when we talk about the power punches and everything, okay, listen. Yeah, when Gary Russell Jr. was pop shotting, yeah, he was looking great and all that. All right, I mean, he was hitting Magsayo with some pretty good shots and everything, catching him in the body and whatnot. But Magsayo, he would throw like a 5 to 8 punch combination. He was very busy and everything. Although the majority of them punches was missing, I say about, out of the 5 punch combination he'll throw, sometimes 2 would get in, sometimes 1. But if the 1 get in is mainly an uppercut, yeah, he could use that to steal around. And when he throw an 8 punch combination, no, not all 8 punches will get through. Sometimes 3, sometimes 2, But the thing is, he was landing more than Gary Russell Jr., who was just pop shotting. Now, there was times in that fight where Gary Russell Jr., what he would do is, he'll start tripling it up and doubling it up on his straight left. Okay, and that looked good. And when he was doing that, he was catching Magsayo and everything. But Magsayo, he, said, look, this guy only got 1 arm. All right. I mean, he's catching me 3 times in a row with that straight left. So what I'm going to do is when he throw that straight left, I'm going to move to Gary Russell Jr.'s right. And he had every right to, because there was nothing coming from Gary Russell Jr.'s right hand because it was hurt. Okay, he couldn't throw it. So that's what, Mark Magsayo did, okay, in that fight to avoid Gary Russell Jr.'s, when he was tripling up on his straight left. However, man, this was a pretty good fight. Congratulations to Magsayo and everything. And just looking at this fight, I'm thinking to myself, damn, you know, if Gary Russell Jr. could do this after 2 years off, you know what I mean? It's like, damn, who knows what Earl Spence could do with Dennis Ugas. But then again, you know, it's kind of different because, you know, Gary Russell Jr., he, like, he's a gym rat, okay? And from what, you know, I was hearing with, you know, Earl Spence, you know, he was always injured. You know, he was getting beat up in workouts and whatnot, you know what I mean? So I can't say Earl Spence was still, or Earl Spence was still perform, you know, at top level against your Dennis Ugas. Now, no, I was wrong against, you know, my man's here, Gary Russell Jr., but he still lost. The right man won. All right, no matter what no one say, the right guy got the victory last night. However, you know, I was wrong. I thought Gary Russell Jr. may be stopped, and hey, he proved me wrong on that. So anyways, man, what a great fight it was, man. Gary Russell Jr. versus Mark Magsayo. We got to see this again, I hope. That's my take on this. This is CMD Boxing Report, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.